as well. In 1885 he does a study of Jewish boys.
One chap who found such ideas particularly compelling was Adolf Hitler. David Stack runs a course called From Darwin to Death Camps. He believes the Nazis took Galton's ideas one step further, using them to justify the extermination of Jews.
Is there a direct line between Darwin, Galton and Hitler?
There's a direct line. Is Darwin responsible for what happens under the Nazis? No. Is there an intellectual connection? Then yes. Darwin removes the spirituality of mankind. He places man within nature. Once you do that, then you can begin to regard man as you regard animals and as you regard the plant kingdom.
You'll find very few good-minded liberal atheists arguing the case for eugenics these days. But why not? What's the matter, boys? Scientifically, it is, after all, very difficult to argue against. But something stops us clamouring for the compulsory sterilisation of mentally handicapped people. Something perhaps unscientific.
That something is called morality. The fact that atheists have to confront is a terrible one. The scientific method is, by definition, supposedly disinterested and neutral. So, if you rely on science to tell you how to live your life, where do you look for moral guidance? Natural selection and survival of the fittest are the only moral imperatives that can be adduced from Darwinism. Unsurprisingly, not many atheists fancy that approach to morality. And so atheism's big thinkers are working hard to find a moral code that is based on reason. Peter Singer is one of atheism's greatest ethical philosophers.
Lovely tuning. Where do you think we derive ethics from?
I think essentially we get ethics when we take a wider point of view, when we don't just think of our own selfish interests, but when we think of the interests of a larger group. So we're sort of putting ourselves in the position of taking an impartial view as to what should or shouldn't be done.
Your view of ethics presumably means a moral code which necessarily changes.
The overall moral principle that says you should do what has the best consequences never changes. But, of course, in different circumstances, a particular action will have different consequences.
But doesn't that lead to a moral vacuum?
No, I don't think it leads to a moral vacuum. I think it leads to a more reflective morality, one that is held perhaps in a somewhat more tentative way.
A tentative morality is also what we find in Richard Dawkins' latest entertaining excursion into religion bashing, The God Delusion. In it, Dawkins kindly comes up with his own new set of 10 commandments. You have to say they lack a certain rigour.
You replace the 10 Commandments with your own 10 Commandments, which I have to say look rather wishy-washy, here today, gone tomorrow. Isn't the great thing about religion that it has given us a longevity of moral behaviour?
Well, I'm astonished you should think that was a good thing. I mean, because you actually look at the morality that comes out of the Old Testament, everybody's appalled by it. I mean, just about everybody's appalled by it. The here today, gone tomorrow thing, I actually rather agree with that, and that's one of the points I'm trying to make, that there is what I call a steadily shifting moral zeitgeist.
Well, this might sound well and good in principle, but the track record of societies that have done away with the moral certitudes of religion is far from ideal. Back in the 18th century, a group of French revolutionaries, the Jacobins, did away with Christianity and sought to build a society based on rational thought. It ended in extreme violence.
Well, the first attempt to create a society consciously without God was made by the Jacobins in France in the 1790s with their cult of reason. It was part of a broader desire to sort of purify society. I mean, these were people, sort of deadly moralists, as it were, and you know, in order to implement their moral vision on earth, they essentially tried to destroy Christianity.
The Jacobins' moral position left them in no doubt as to what to do with their ideological enemies.
In Western France alone, they killed about 250,000 people who had attempted to adhere to the old religion. The Jacobins weren't having this. They just slaughtered them.
The Jacobins were not unique. Burley points out that societies which have rejected God have not escaped mankind's violent nature.
I think if you subtract God and you subtract the notion of an afterlife, then there is a real risk, particularly in the political utopianisms which we saw, which are so deadly in the 20th century. There's a real risk that you will attempt to create heaven on earth, go for a quick fix in the here and now, to have the arrogant illusion that you can remake man and woman into some sort of new being, and that invariably results in hell for ordinary people.
This is Vladimir Nikiforov, a Catholic priest who is chaplain at Royal Holloway College. He lived through this very same kind of hell in his Russian homeland, which was then a Marxist utopia based on reason. In 1974, Vladimir was drawn to God and became a Christian. Unfortunately for him, this put him on the wrong side of the communist state.
I was secretly ordained priest in organized community, also clandestine community in Moscow. That was in violation of the state laws.
Atheism has been an integral part of all communist states.
The party demanded atheism in its rules. You can't be a party member if you're a member of any religion, actually.
Do you think that that secularism can be as brutal as religious fundamentalism?
Well, it has been. Going back to the communist state, when the state wanted to exterminate religious groups, it did that with much cruelty. So if we are talking about the crimes of militant secularism, the list can be very, very, very long. Fascism, communism, they were secular ideologies, basically. And look what they did. So in this case, who is talking? We are all ideologies or religions. We all have criminal record in the past, and we should be humble about that, I suppose.
Atheists don't go out to kill for other people's beliefs.
Forgive me for mentioning Hitler, Stalin,
Catholic.
Mao.
No, they weren't.
Stalin killed 20 million people.
Yeah, but he was a Confucian.
Oh, come on. That is that is wriggling of the most ludicrous kind.
But they don't,
so it was an atheistic system.
Yeah, but they don't go out to kill in the name of atheism.